Welcome back to our Introduction to SQL Programming course. This is session 6. This is the data manipulation language, or DML. In this video, we are going to discuss the SQL insert statement. So there are multiple ways to structure the insert statement. Here we're going to look at the insert and value structure. So the insert statement adds rows to a table. In addition, insert specifies the table or view the data will be inserted into, so we have to specify the table. Then there is the column list, and that's the lists of columns that will be affected by the insert. A column can be omitted, but it will need to have some kind of a default associated with it if it is omitted. If there is no default value, it's possible that an error will be returned. If you are including columns, they can be listed in any order in the insert statement. The values section of the statement specifies the specific data that is being inserted into the records. So values is required when using insert values. Here is the syntax of the insert statement. So we can see here, insert into table name. A view name is a virtual table, and then a column list right after that. And then if we're using values, we need that value list. We can also pass a select statement that selects data from a different table. It's got to be selected properly so it matches the column list. But this is also an alternative way, and sometimes a faster way, particularly if you're migrating data from an existing table. When inserting rows with the insert statement, these rules generally apply. Inserting an empty string, again a string, we need to pass the quotes with the empty quote character. We would pass that into a varchar or text column, and it maybe insert a space or a null. There can also be defaults as well. All column characters are right padded to a defined length, and it's important to know you've got to pass the data as it is defined in the database. All trailing spaces are removed from data inserted into varchar columns, except in strings that contain only spaces. These strings are truncated to a single space, so that's important to know. If an insert statement violates a constraint, default, or rule, or if it is the wrong data type, the statement fails, and the SQL-Server, in this case, not the product, but just the generic term, returns an error message. When you specify values for some of the columns in the column list, one of three things can happen to the columns that have no default value. So a default value is entered if a column has a default constraint, if a default is bound to a column, or if a default is bound to an underlying user-defined data type. Null is entered if a column allows null and no default value exists for that column. An error message is displayed and the row is rejected if the column is not entered properly or is defined as not null, or if no default exists. Again, if an integer is entered incorrectly, say with a character that's not an integer, an error message will also be returned. Let's take a look at an insert statement here, insert values. So here, this table is called classes, and we can see three columns here in the classes, but notice the class ID is auto increment. So, and it's also the primary key. So the database is going to take care of entering the class ID for me. So when I come down here to our insert statement, we have insert into, and the table name is classes. Our column list in this case only has to be class name and student count, again because the the database is going to take care of inserting the class ID for me, and our values are going to correspond to the order here. And again, these don't have to be any specific order, but the order here has to correspond. So the first, the value of the data here is the class name is going to be chemistry 210, and the student count is going to be 105. And we can go ahead and run this, and notice here it's an integer, so I have to use an integer here. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and that data was inserted. And again, we can do a select star from classes to see our inserted data right here. And we can also run an insert using a select statement. In this case, we also have a table that is very similar that we want to migrate some data from, called just class. And we can see here it's structured and built the same way, but we need to take a look at the data that's in here, and we want to insert this data into our classes table. So we can do that using an insert select. And here is our example of using an insert with a select statement. So again, we're inserting into classes. We're able here to take a look at the classes. We see there are 4 records currently in the class table. We can see that the data does match, so we should be able to run this select class name, which is one of the columns, and also student count. And again, their data matches the classes table, and we can see again there are 4 records in here, so we should have 4 more added. And so we again are going to insert into classes, but we're going to select the data in the class name and student count from the class table. And again, we do not have to pass our class ID for classes because that is given to us automatically by the database. So that went ahead and ran. And if we do again our select star from class as, we can see that this data 200, 210, 220, which is, these are big classes, big student counts, possibly remote. We can see here that they were all added, database applications, database reporting, and they were all very easily added to the classes table.